bring you to my screen.
Okay.
Okay, I hope you guys are able to see my screen now.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So today I'll be speaking on managing secure access to AWS using IAM. I'll speak about what is IAM and various topics underneath. Let's see what the content consists of. We'll speak about IAM, that's AWS IAM, AWS Identity and Access Management. We'll speak about root access, how to access your IAM basically. We'll speak about the various people that could access IAM, which are the principals, various access to AWS. How could you access your AWS account? How the various ways you could access your AWS account. User groups, what are user groups? Roles, the various roles both users and resources could use to access AWS. Policies, what are policies? Policy assignments, how to assign policies on AWS, and IAM best practices. Also, in between, we'll go for a very short demo where I would give you guys access to an AWS account using IAM. We'll be able to set that up together, then we'll be able to see how it works out. Okay, so let's get into it. First off, what is AWS Identity and Access Management? IAM is an AWS service used to control authentication. Now, what is authentication? You want to go into a particular AWS account, you have to interact with the resources, you have to do things. Those are authorization. Are you authorized into the account? Should you be allowed into the account? Why should you be allowed into the account? Who is this kind of person coming to this particular account, right? So that is authorization. You can't actually access an AWS account if you don't have authorization. And once you're in the account, you can't do anything without permission. So now that's where that's authentication. Who is entering the account. Authorization is the permissions you have to actually do what you want to do in the AWS account. You can see the IAM, basically those are the major two things IAM actually controls. You can see the authentication part and the authorization part. We'll speak more into this as we move on the slides. Now, let's just say for the first time you registered your AWS account, you're able to do everything. The first access you have into your AWS account is your root user access. With this, your root user access, all you just need to do is your email and your password, then you have access to your AWS account. That initial user that has access to the AWS account controls everything about AWS. You have total control over the resources. You could do anything, you could build up a server, you could build your own personal website. It's as simple as that. It doesn't really take time to set it up. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as straightforward. There's no limited access to what you could do in the account if you have a root user login. We will speak more about root users and why you shouldn't use root users. The major reasons, before we even continue, let me just delve into that a bit. The major reasons why you shouldn't actually use root users is because you have total control over the account. Now, that is a good thing, total control per se. But I'm going to explain why total control is not really a good thing. I think 3-4 years ago, I created my first AWS account. I was learning. I created my first AWS account. I didn't really know much about IAM. So I was playing around, creating RDS, working on some stuff, so just testing stuff basically. Then I remembered I was trying to connect to a table I created locally using MySQL. I created my SQL table. I spent like 3 hours on it. I wasn't able to. It was late at night, around 11. Then I decided to sleep off. I just like, okay, I'll continue tomorrow from where I stopped. I woke up around, I think 7 a.m. in the morning to an email from AWS stating I owned $300. Like, it didn't work. I tried creating something, it didn't work. Using root access. I tried creating something, it didn't work. And I woke up the next morning, I was owing $300. That's how full access, that's what full access gets you on AWS, right? Full access, you could do everything you want, which is good. But full access gets you unnecessary costs. Hacking, if somebody have access to your account, the person could do basically anything. So, right, we'll see how we could actually mitigate this, how we could stop things like this from happening in our AWS accounts. Okay, so the next slide explains who could enter into your AWS account. AWS account sees every other person as an entity, as a principal. The principal is an entity that can request an action or operation on an AWS account. When you log in into an AWS account, that's an action, that's an operation basically. You're logging into an AWS account. When you click on to view your tables, when you click on your pipelines, when you try to click on CloudWatch events, basically you're taking actions on that AWS account, right? You're a principal taking actions. Now let's explain who are the various principals that AWS recognizes. You can see there are 4 principals here. The first one is an IAM user. An IAM user is a user you create on an AWS account. You give the user the login details to the account, and the user will be able to log in into the AWS account. It's as simple as that. You give the user login details into the account, the user will just be able to log into the AWS account and do various kind of things on the account. We have an IAM role. Let's say the user you want to create, you want a specific role for that user, a front-end engineer, as the use case might be a back-end engineer. Or let's say you have an AWS service, right? You want the AWS service, very good example now, Lambdas. You want the Lambda to have access to a table you created, let's say DynamoDB table. That Lambda too, as it is, it has to have a role to actually access the IAM. And AWS recognizes that Lambda as a separate entity, as a principal on its own. You can see here at the bottom left corner, you have AWS services. At the bottom right corner, you have identity providers or federated users. Most of us have made use of various websites where when we go, we have to log in to the website, sign in and register, fill in our names and stuff like that. But occasionally, there is an option where they say sign in with Google. You don't actually fill in your stuff, so you just do is just you click and automatically it registers you for the website. And what you're doing is you're using an identity provider. Now AWS has a service that takes care of this using AWS Cognito, but they recognize that person that is actually trying to sign in. They recognize the person as a different entity, like your standalone entity trying to sign into the AWS account and make use of the AWS account. So as you can see now, we have 4 basic principals or entities that could access AWS account and various things they could do. You could see even with the entities, this arrow here, if you could see my mouse a bit, this arrow here contains a little white box that has ticks, 2 positive ticks and 1 cancel. That stands for the permissions. That is for each particular user that is coming into the account, regardless of who the user is, regardless if the user is if it is a user or an AWS service or an identity provider, you have to have permissions. Even if you have access to the account, what can you do on that account? What are you authorized to do on that account? You understand? Authentication is different. Are you able to log into the account? Should we allow you into the account? Do you have the right credentials? Now, authorization is even if you could log into the account, what can you do? What is the permission? What are the permissions given to you for what you could do on that same account? Okay, so let's speak on the various access to AWS. You could see basically these are the 3 major access to AWS. You have console access. Console access is when you go to the website and type in console.aws.com. Basically takes you to the AWS website. That's console. You do everything you want to do. You can provision everything you want to provision on the console. No stress, as easy as that. We have the command line interface, AWS CLI. Some of us might have interacted with AWS CLI. They have a command line interface you install on your local machine. Even it is on the web too, on Cloud Shell. It's called AWS Cloud Shell on the web. You could make use of it to interact with your AWS account, see what you have in your AWS account, create anything you want to create. Still the same thing as also access, just that it has specific kind of codes, right? It has this kind of parameters you have to pass in to get what you're requesting for. We also have AWS SDK. SDK is basically a software development kit, right? This is the kit provisioned by AWS for you to be able to write what you want in code. You write what you want to access what you want in code. Say if I'm a front-end developer, for example, now I want to save some of my images in an S3 bucket. I could create the S3 bucket, but then I can't be automatically putting the images I've created, the images the users has given to me to the S3 bucket. I have to write it via code. So AWS provides an SDK for that. For Python, it's to 3. For various languages, you could use it to interact with your various AWS services and automatically saves you time. Okay, so we're going to speak on the various part of IAMs right now. So we have various IAM, various levels of IAM, how to access. Remember, initially we mentioned users, right? But then in AWS, they've redefined users to what we call user groups. They redefined users to user groups. Now, who are user groups? User groups are a particular group of users that does a specific kind of thing. I will explain that. Say you're a company, you're a startup, for example, you have you're a startup, for example, and you have 6 workers, 6 employees. Out of the 6 employees, there are, let's just say, 2 front-end engineers, 2 back-end engineers, 1 PM, and you, the owner of the owner of the AWS account, and everyone is working for you. Now you're the root user, right? You're the one that created the account, but you have to give everybody access into the same account because they all have to develop the application you want them to in your own AWS account, right? So you could actually classify these users into groups because you have 2 front-end engineers. You don't want to be writing different permissions for different person. You could just create a single group, write a single permission and attach it to that group and put your users you've created for various AWS users. You could put the users into that group. It's as simple as that. It doesn't take time, straightforward and easy. You can see here we have the first group, which is the front-end engineering, shortened as FE. The second group, which is the back-end engineering, shortened as BE. The third group, which is the project manager. Let's just say you have an extra project manager, PM. All these are groups groups that contain individual users inside of them. So basically, user groups are just collection of IAM users. Now we have roles. We spoke about roles initially. What are roles? Roles are, if you have the deliver, you can see on the slide, IAM roles deliver temporary AWS credentials for NTCs to access the resource needed for a particular role. Okay, I'll buttress that point by saying I have a user. For example, I'm the root user. And I also want to see what my front end are doing. I could actually do that in the front end. I could actually do that in the root user account. But what if, for example, a backend, I'm a project manager, right? I'm a project manager. I really don't know much about what the front end is doing, and I really need access to what the developers doing. I need to see what images are in the S3 bucket. You could create a particular role for that project manager, and you assign the role to the project manager. The project manager will be able to enter into the AWS accounts. The project manager will be able to enter into the AWS accounts and go into, with the permission specified in that role, you'll be able to go into the S3 bucket and do what you need the project manager to do. In that S3 bucket, you could specify the project manager to be able to see what is in the S3 bucket, but not delete, not write into the S3 bucket, not create new files, just to see what images are there. Aside that, you also assign roles to various AWS services, right? For your various AWS services, for them to interact with each other, they need some sort of permissions. Regardless of the fact that the services are within your AWS account, they need permissions to be able to interact with each other, to be able to call each other, to be able to do various things. Now, you could see in the diagram on the slide, you could see there's a group called front-end engineering. The group consists of 2 people, that is John and Cosm. Why John is an intern, Cosm is a staff. You don't want to give an intern permission, let's just say they are front-end engineers, you don't want to give the intern permission to be able to delete stuff on your account because the intern doesn't know much, they don't know what they're doing, they might mistakenly and try to delete stuff, right? For testing, they might say, okay, let me just see what this does and try to delete stuff. They don't know up to as good as what the staff knows. The staff is a qualified personnel compared to an intern. You could specify in the role for the particular intern, you could specify the permissions, which actually removes the delete permissions for the particular user, right? So that is what rules are about. That is what you could use rules to do. How do you actually make use of these rules I've been talking about? How do you make use of the rules to actually access AWS? I'm going to explain how it works in the background. Now, let's have a look at this. This diagram consists of how roles work in the background. So when you sign in, you actually sign into a role. The role gives you temporary credentials. It means that as long as you are signed in using this role, you could do this. Those are temporary credentials. I recognize you as long as you're signed in using this particular role. Now, let's say the role is for AWS service, a non-federated user. You understand what that means now, or an IAM user, particularly per se, John. What they do in the first instance is they make a call, an API call. Underneath everything is just basic API calls. You request for permissions. Every time you log into the console, all of them are just basic API calls underneath. So when they request an API call, it goes to the simple token service on AWS. What AWS simple token service does is, with the rules, they have credentials attached to them. You actually might not see the credentials. It gives the credentials to the simple token service. The simple token service searches, yeah, do I have this credential stored? Yeah, okay, this is the person. What is this rule specified for? What can this rule do? Then automatically it packages a credential on permissions on what that rule could do. It sends it back to that particular user. Now, when a particular user tries to access any of the services, he uses that credentials that the simple token service has given to it. He uses it to access the service. You can use it to access S3 bucket, as the case might be, or any AWS resources, be it an EC2 instance or anything you want per se. You understand? So this image actually describes that. You can see the first arrow actually goes to the AWS simple token service. This is what it does underneath, regardless, be it API call, be it console, or be it your SDK, regardless. So what it does is it assumes a call to the simple token service. Simple token service gives it a kind of security to say, okay, this is what you could do. This is what I assume you could do, since this is what the rule you're signed in with. When the simple token service returns with that, it packages it. Then when you want to actually interact with a particular resource, you have to send that to them. Now the resource will understand that, okay, with this particular rule, this is what I should allow this user to do. Now, let's talk about the basic units on AWS. Like, if we all did biology, where the basic unit of life is cell. So this is the basic unit of AWS IAM, the littlest part of AWS IAM. It is called policies. Now, policies is actually where you write the permissions to AWS services. I've been speaking about permissions. How do you actually write those permissions? What do those permissions look like? We will go into that when we get to the demo, but policies are where you actually write those permissions, those specific permissions. Now, there are various types of policies. As you can see, there are AWS policy and there are customer managed policy. AWS managed policy is like AWS says, okay, we believe you as a data scientist, these are the kind of things you should do. So we have created a policy to actually suit what you should do and what you should have access to. You understand? That's the job function policy. We have the service access policy. Like I made mention of, right? All AWS services or all AWS resources makes use of a particular rule to access what they need to do. So now, for example, an EC2 instance, a Lambda or an SQS wants to get a message from an EC2 instance, wants to pull a message from an EC2 instance. If you give the SQS full access to the EC2 instance, every time a message comes in, the SQS is going to pull that message, right? Regardless of, even if you give, okay, let's say, for example, there's a bucket, then there's an S3 bucket. You have your server running in an EC2 instance, and you want, okay, at the end of the day, the login of that server, the details of how the server run, if there's an error somewhere or something, you want to save the details somewhere. You want to save the details in an S3 bucket. You could give the EC2 instance a rule. In that rule now, you have to specify in one of the policies in the rule, because you could add multiple policies to a particular rule. You want to specify one of the policies in the rule. You want to specify that, okay, I give you access to S3, to this particular S3 to actually dump data, dump whatever file you want to dump in this particular S3 bucket. So that is service access. These are the access you give to particular AWS resources, job function to a particular job, and customer managed policy. Now, customer managed policy is a policy you've written by yourself for particular customers. You understand what I'm trying to say? So this is when you say, okay, AWS managed policy is not enough for me. I want my users to be able to do, I want my particular engineers to be able to do this. You could write your own policy the way you deem fit. There's a way to write it. You could even use console to actually just describe the policy. It's automatically going to help you to create that policy. Then you name the policy, then you attach it to the particular role or user group, as the case might be. So now in the policies assignments, I made mention of policies at the basic units on AWS IAM, right? Policies is where you write the permissions. And now this is how it works actually. After writing a policy, you attach the policy to either a user, a role, or a user group. I made mention of, I've explained all this earlier before. where you attach a particular policy to a user, the front-end engineer or the back-end, the role, your EC2 instance, or your Lambda permission to have access to the table, to a table, or your user group, front-end engineers, a group with multiple users per se. You understand? Whereby in this case, the role will also be attached to resource or users. If you understand this, right? So automatically it means users could also be assigned, a role could also be assigned to users, and policy could also be assigned to users. But basically, the root place where you write the permissions is still in the policies. You understand? This resource actually stands for any AWS resources, regardless of what it is. So the policies are attached to various identities or principals to give permissions to that identity to be able to do various things on the AWS account. Okay, now this is policy assignment. I would like to run a brief test demo. If you guys would allow me, if some of you could just drop your emails on the income message, I would like to give you a particular account. We'll test out policy, we'll create the policy, then we'll test it out on this call to see how it works. If you're okay with that, please drop your email, income message. We would run through that together here on this call.
So
I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take us to the AWS account. Sorry, please, you're saying something, Mark.
So some people can drop their emails on chat, yeah, right?
Yes, please, they could.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, and I'll try to bring up the AWS account and how it looks like. Okay, so just a second. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, some is coming in. So please pardon me if I didn't select yours. Just pardon me if I didn't select yours. Okay, so here's a couple. So when you log into AWS, basically, right? When you log into AWS, you come to your IAM console. This is the web console. When you come to your IAM console, this is how your dashboard looks like. You have the two. You, as a root user, you have to actually. It's advisable to have an MFA, that's multi-factor authentication. No active access key. If you're not making use of an access key at this point, an access key is what you configure to your CLI to be able to have access to. That is the CLI, the second of the pragmatic access, to be able to have access to your account. So if you're not making use of your access key, it's advisable to actually deactivate it. The user dashboard consists of, you could see here, groups like I made mention of, the various users, policies, roles and policies, identity providers, and this is what users have done on the various AWS accounts and how to just mitigate that. So we're going to just go through it and have a look. Okay, so we're going to create a user. We're going to have a look into that. Let me click on that. Sorry if it's a while to load up. I'm not sure my internet is taking a while. Okay. So while we wait on that, yeah, you can see I created a couple of users the various users.
Teddy, can you hear me?
I would go to user groups. Then we'll go to policies.
Teddy, can you hear me?
There are users. I'll create some users to the particular users. You understand?
Hello.
Then I'll attach user advertising. So these are the users I created, front end engineers, the back engineers. So you're about saying something?
Oh yes. Do you mind killing your video?
Okay, I'm just going. So now let's come to policies. I hope get to the screen, right? You see the on the AWS console. Let me know if you're on the income message. It's still like putting up video start going to bit. Responsible to wait a bit. Okay, I'm going to request permission from you guys. I'm going to permission to switch off my video for a while so that it will load faster. Just because of it. Yes. So let me know if you see. Hello, guys. Can you hear me, please? I can't hear anybody speaking or anyone on the income message.
Yeah, we can hear you. But there's a bit of
a
delay, but it's okay. You can go on.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we're going to create a policy. I've created a couple of policy initially. So let me just take you through the policy. I'm not going to create one. I'm just going to explain how it works. I've created a couple of policies. I've not created for backend. Maybe we should do it for backend. Now, this policy is for the front-end engineers. Let's click on this. I created this element. So this is permissions. You see this policy, how it looks like. When you want to write this, you could click on a particular policy and tell you the summary. The summary is, okay, what basically this policy you've written, how does it look like? What can it do? You can see we have to, I want front-end engineer to have access to S3 buckets to store their start events, to have access to S3 buckets, to have access to commit. I still loading, just continue with that. To have access to code commit so that they'll be able to push code into a repo. Code commit is basically AWS version of GitHub. So be able to push their code into a repo and a repository and code pipeline so that when they push their code, let's say we have the CI/CD that is a pipeline that is running. I want them to be able to see the pipeline as it's running and like maybe if the pipeline has access, they should give access to what is on the pipeline. So this is it. This is how it looks like when I say write a policy. Policy is actually written in the JSON format. This is how the policy looks like. Statements. Basically, this statement takes for each particular policy. Now, the first statement is for the S3. Now, statements, effects. What kind of effect is that allowed? Effects are either allowed or denied. So the effect is allowed. What action? What should we allow? Now, on S3, I want to allow data to put object into S3, to object from S3, to list the S3 buckets, to upload stuff into the bucket in multi-part, that is divide it into little version, S3 bucket versioning, so that when they mistakenly delete something, we could just revert back to the former version. On what AWS, the resources is basically on what AWS service do you want us to attach this policy to? So now I'm taking it, which means I want you to attach this policy to all AWS service, regardless of the bucket that has the account, as long as they have permission to this. As long as this policy is attached, you could see the code commit. Basically, that's how it works. This is the ID that is allow commit access. This is the effect, either allow, deny, simple as that. Action, what they do, and resources is on what repo now. That's code commit say. You understand? So it's as simple as we're going to create one. We're going to try creating one to just see how simple it is to create a policy. You don't really need to write it. Let's just say you don't know policy. Now you can see before I go to the group, you see these are some customer managed. This is AWS managed policy with AWS. Now they believe, okay, you want to have a cloud with full access. You could attach a cloud with full access to a particular user, so the user will see what is going wrong in cloud, be able to write to CloudWatch, configure rules and stuff like that. So this is you can see they're very this is bright orange. Sorry, apologies for that. I'm not really good with colors, so it might be bright orange or not. I don't know, but this is orange definitely, that I can tell. Why custom policy is actually at the top. So I'm going to create a new policy to see how it works out, how we should create policies. Let's create policies, statements like the one I showed earlier on. Policy statement allow and resources, the policies. That is what I recommend. Or you select this, select that. It's as simple. If this loads of info for you, how you could create that kind of policy, is pretty much straightforward and simple. While we're on that, I would also quickly something. So if you remember initially when we began this slide, I mentioned of access. So when you create your AWS account, you're going to definitely have root access to all your AWS services. And I mentioned why it's not good to have access to all your AWS services. Two key understandings are there. One, access to all your AWS services automatically means you could run down, or you could actually accumulate cost very fast. And you know you're accumulating cost because AWS is not going to tell you when you accumulate cost. They only tell you, okay, this is how much we know basically. So what I would advise you to do is, as long as immediately into your AWS account,
James,
apologies. Authentication, then there's an application, or you use an application.
Hey James, I think sorry for interrupting. I don't know if it's me. I hear like your voice breaking a lot.
A lot. Okay. So I'm just going to start afresh. But before that, can you guys hear me clearly? Let's make sure. Can you guys hear me clearly?
I think right now it's better, but before you are breaking a lot.
Okay. So I'm just going to repeat what I said before. I'm going to repeat what I said before. Or okay, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it before rounding up. Let's just go on with this. You understand? Let's just create a policy and see how it looks like. So basically, when creating AWS policies, you could select service. You see, specify what actions come on specific resource in the service. Now, this is a service. So specify what action. Let's select that. Now we've selected. Okay, you selected under. Let's select something that's easy, more explainable. Let's select S3. I believe more people have actually worked with S3 than Lambda. Let's select S3. S3 is the bucket where you just save images, right? Now, now to do that S3 resources, you could not write it. I could come to JSON here. Then I could, with my code, I could be able to write it. You see, simple as that. But when I'm visualizing, need to do is to click what I want and justify. So this is an S3 bucket. Okay, now it's S3. What actions do you want us to do in the particular S3? Say, I just want to see what is on the S3. So we could go all regions. I don't want to stress myself much. See anything you want to see. But then you're not able to delete, you need to write, that is, you cannot upload objects, but you could just basically see what's in the S3. You understand? Now, this will specify what S3 bucket do you want people to have permission to. You can specify the S3 bucket using the ARN, that's Amazon Resource Number. That is, for each service you create on AWS, you have an automatically Amazon Resource Number attached to that service. That is the unit number for that particular service. For a particular bucket, all of them has an Amazon Resource Number. But let's just say, okay, I want you to have access to all S3 buckets. What I'm going to select is all instead of. Now, is going to tell me too much permission for the selected action. Basically, specify what bucket you want us to actually give resource to improve security. I'm just going to override that, you understand? But they basically told me, hey, you're giving too much permissions and we don't want that. Okay, so request conditions. What are request conditions? Request conditions are also particular conditions whereby you attach to a policy to specify that if the policy does not meet this particular condition, don't allow it to work. Now, if I click requested from a particular IP, I'm going to attach the IP I want that should be able to access the S3 bucket. A very good example, let's say, like the example I made mention of before, an EC2 instance, right? An EC2 instance, I want to save the logs into an S3 bucket so that anytime I come, I just want to view what is in the S3 bucket. The IP of the EC2 instance, I could write the IP of that particular EC2 instance. That is, if the request to save something particular IP, if it's not coming to that IP address, don't allow it into the S3 bucket. You could see that specialized an higher level of security aside from just attaching the resources to the particular role. You understand? Also specializes an higher level of security. So since not actually have any IP, I'm just going to create the
Hello. Hello, Teddy. I think, have you muted yourself? Teddy, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry about that, guys. Hope you can hear me.
Okay.
You still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. So basically, now I've created the S3 resource. You could see it is specified now S3. You have full access to all S3 requests, all S3 resources, no conditions. And I could just say policy name. I could just say full access to S3. Now, this is not necessary because AWS has their own specific resource created, specific policy created to grant you full access to S3. All you just need to do is search for that specific resource. So basically, I've shown you how to create, but we're not going to create a resource. So we could just come back to the policy and we could search for S3 here. So what for S3, you could see AWS has S3's full access. AWS manage S3 full access. Basically gives you S3 full access. Now we're looking for only read S3. AWS, Amazon S3 read only access basically gives you the permission to only read on all Amazon resources. You understand? And that was what we were trying to do. So automatically means we don't actually have to provision stuff like this. You could just come to look for the particular resource you're looking for. There's over 1,000 that AWS has created already. Then you attach it to the role or the particular user you want to attach it to. It's as simple as that. So let's go to the particular users and let's create users. You can see these are the users, and one of the users is an engineer group. So let's add user. I'm just going to pick some of the emails dropped here already. Start from the start. Okay, I'm going to start from the start here. So Collins, sorry, I can't copy your Gmail. I'm just going to add it by myself here. You can see it's as simple as that. I will not provide you access to the management console. You can see. Now I want to create an IAM user. I want you to generate a password for me, and I want you to show the password so that I'll be able to see the password and give it to you so that you'll be able to use it to log in. User must create a new password when they sign in so that when you sign in, you automatically change the password. You must change the password because everybody can see this password now. I want you to change that password. So when you're signing in, automatically nobody else will have permission except you. So if you're on your, it will actually be good. I'm going to add it to the front-end engineering group. That is a user group I've created already. I could attach a policy directly to you. You could see attach policy or copy permissions. If I have other users and I want to give the same permission I give to other users to you. But no, I've already created a user group with the specific permissions I want to give to you. So I'll just attach permission to that. I'll attach it to that particular user group, automatically giving you that same permission. You understand? Permission boundary, you could set permission boundaries. This is to control permissions, basically. The maximum things you could do. That's what permission boundary is for. You can see this is just created one now. Go. This is next. Basically, it's as simple as this. You can just to associate it with the resource so that you'll be able to come back to it anytime. Then make a user. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Now, for Collins, right, I'm just going to send this. This is what you use to sign in the console URL. Collins, I'm just going to type it in the income message. and I'm going to put the password alongside it. So when you put that URL and you put in your email, right? You go to that URL, you put in your email, and you put in the password which is underneath it, you're automatically going to have access to this particular AWS account. It's as simple as that. That's I would like Collins to confirm, and for the meantime, I'll give permission to 2 or 3 other people, add them to various user groups. Permission to the users. Let me show you about the user groups, Collins, so that you know the kind of things you could do. I've actually restricted a lot of access because it's my AWS account. And so Collins, you're here. Let's see the permissions I attached to the front-end engineers, that is the policies. Now you can see this is the first one I attached. I gave you access to S3 to only read what is in S3 and put something into S3 here. You could upload objects into S3. I gave you access to, I'm assuming you're a front-end engineer. I gave you access to code commit. So you could put things in your repo, you could create a repo, you could do a git push, do a git pull, create a branch and the likes, you understand? And I gave you access to pipeline. Let's just assume we have a pipeline which we are actually using to develop our particular resources, so that you'll be able to see how your pipeline is running. If your pipeline failed due to your code, you'll be able to see, to cross-check and go and fix your code and make a push to the repo again to trigger the pipeline to run. That's for CI/CD. Attached EC2 instances. No, I want you to create an EC2 instance, but I only want you to create a T2 EC2 instance, which is actually the minimum. So if you try creating any EC2 instance aside from T2, it's going to run an error. It's going to tell you you're not authorized to actually do this. You could see how I'm actually specifying authorization for the various users. Now I don't have to bother to be attaching permissions or to be creating special policies for particular users. I only just need to put them in a specific group so that they will have specific permissions to what I want them to do. You understand? There's also only US one. This is, we all know AWS have various regions which you can actually provision what you want. If you are not in US East 1, I don't want you to create anything. That is the only region where you could create what I want you to create is in US East 1. You could only create your TC2 instance, you understand, T2 instance in US East 1. You could see how the permissions are specified. You could attach multiple policies to a particular user group, even to a particular user. You understand? Then attach the Collins. Basically, this is it. Collins, do you have access? Please just let us know in the income message why I create other users. Could I drop to your mail? Yeah, I could actually forward it to your mail, but then it will require me to send an email, which I don't want to. No problem. If you don't have access, I'm just going to leave it up for the rest of today. Then after today, I'm going to delete it so you could test it out later. I'm going to test for other users. Basically, I want somebody to just confirm if they could do any of these things. It's as simple as that. So I want them to have access to console. We're just going to basically do the same things for 2, 3 users. Auto-generated password. I want you to show me the password, and I want the user to change the password when they log in. So this user actually to the backend. The backend has specific policies. We're going to view that after I create this particular user. So we're just going to view that. Now, this particular user, you know yourself, Anthony, so this is your user. I'm just going to give you the password. You could use the same link as Collins. Put in your username will be your email. You use the same link as Collins. Your username is going to be your email, and this is your password. This is for Anthony. So I'm just going to append your name to it, Anthony, so that we don't make the mistake of various people make use of the account. So Anthony, that is your password. I would love somebody to try it out and actually confirm if they could do any of the things I'm saying. Anthony, you're in the backend engineering group. So let's see the permissions you have. The permissions I've specified and I've created to attach to you. So now the permission you have is you could read DynamoDB table. I'm assuming since you're a backend engineer, you should have access to your DynamoDB table to be able to read what is in the table, but not write into the table. You cannot write or delete from the table, but you could see the list of tables that are there. I'm pretty sure there's no tables there. T2 micro, the same as the front end, and only US is one. You could see I could definitely use the same policy I created for others. I could use the same policy in this particular user group, right? So right now I'm just going to create for a couple more users and 1 or 2 more users, and that's all. So Vitalis, you're next. Vitalis, you're next. I just want you guys to confirm. Anthony, please, if you could try it out, right? To confirm if you could create any other EC2 instance aside from T2. You could create a T2 and see if it works, then try creating others to see if it works too. Just to clarify, to see if that works. I'm going to add you to backend areas too, so I'm going to add you to front end. So we're going just to create the straightforward, pretty simple. This is just straightforward, pretty simple. And now this is the password. So this is for Vitalis. I'm just going to send this to you here. So that's the password, Vitalis. And one last person, then we'll call it. That's all. Sorry, Kelvin, sorry, Mark. Okay, so there's a question here. Before I continue, what's the benefit of assigning permissions to a group? That's by it's not a mail, Anthony. Just click on the URL I sent earlier on. Click on the URL or copy the URL and go to that URL. Then you will see it. I'm not sending the mail to you. You can see here email signing instructions. I could forward the email to you, but I'm not in this case. You understand? Because that would make me. I didn't configure any SNS or anything, or SES or anything. That would make me to send the email to you via my own mail, and I don't want that. So that's why I'm giving you the URL. The URL, I dropped it earlier on, just check. You understand? You'll see it. That's why I'm not giving you the mail. Sorry about that. Please resend the URL. Okay, so let me send the URL. This Vitalis I've already sent for Vitalis. I'm just going to send the URL here. Okay, so please, if you have questions, you could drop your questions in the income call. I've sent the URL. You could drop your questions in the income call. So Tony is asking, what are the benefits of assigning permission to a group? Now, I made mention of this before, Tony. Let's say you're owner of an AWS account and you have people that works underneath you, like 5 or 6 people. Or let's just say your account is actually very big. You have like, your company is very big. You have like 20 people. And out of the 20, you have like 5 front-end engineers, 7 back-end engineers, 4 DevOps guys, like developer operations. You have data analysts to help you analyze data. You have multiple groups of people, and underneath each group, you have like 5 people or 6 people each. You understand? You could create users for all of them, but do you want to create users and also be managing permissions to each particular user? That is, for each particular user, you'll be looking for the policy you want to attach to that particular user. It is more easier to just create a single group and name the group front-end engineers and attach the permissions you want that group to have to that front-end engineers. You understand? And if you have like 10 users, you could just put all the users in that user group. It's as simple as that. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to attach any permissions to that particular user. All you just need to do is put that user in the user group. As long as the user group contains the details, you understand? As long as the user group contains the details. Oh wow, I think I've been sending that password to somebody, not to the whole group. Sorry about that. I've been sending the password to a particular person, and people didn't see their password. Nobody spoke a thing. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to send the passwords again for people. Sorry, I'm so sorry, my apologies. I didn't send it to the group. That's why people think they couldn't see it. So this first password, I think, trying to get the right person I sent the password to. So I think this first password is for Collins. So Collins, I'm just going to append your name to it. You could see the password there and then go to that URL link and put the password. You understand? Sorry about that. I didn't know I was sending it to a particular person, to Kelvin. Kelvin has been saying it and Kelvin didn't say a word. Thank you, Kelvin. The next one is to Anthony. So Anthony, I think your password starts with a Y. Password starts with a Y. So here you go. And the last one is Vitalis. Sorry about that. So this is the password. Okay, this thing is actually hooking up, hanging up. So, Vitalis, I'm just going to send in the password now. Yeah, this is your password. So you can put in your email. I hope everyone is saying that. Sorry. Even the URL, I've been sending the URL to a particular person. Sorry about that. Sorry. I didn't know. No problem. Kelvin is apologizing. Sorry about that. No issues. That's no problem. So you guys, that's your passwords. You could please test it out. I think the time is fast spent to actually work on others. So I want these 3 people, if you could test it out and just confirm to the group that create an EC2 instance, right? Try to create an EC2 instance and create the minimum one you have there. Then see if you could create any other EC2 instance aside from that. Let's just confirm. You understand? So basically, I was answering a question earlier on, a question by Tony, which was benefit of assigning permissions to a group. So I explained that if you assign permissions to a group, what you just need to do is attach the user to that particular group. You don't have to assign permissions to that particular user or stress yourself out. I hope, Tony, I hope that's like explainable enough. Do you get that? If you don't, you could please drop a message. I'll explain better. I hope that's okay. If not, you could please just drop a message. I'll be able to explain better. Okay, yeah, you're welcome, Tony. Said it's okay. So anyone with any other questions? If for the lack of questions, while we wait on those who went to test it out, I would stop sharing my screen. I'm not sure if I'm sharing my screen initially, but I will go to the slides just to round off. I think there's still one more slide left. There's still one more slide, yes. Yes, I'll go to the slide just to round it off. So this is the policy assignment I made mention of. And now this is the last slide. IAM best practices. What are the best way to actually use your IAM? So I was saying something the other time and somebody said they didn't actually quite get me. Hope you guys could see my screen. Just confirm an income message.
We can see your
or
screen.
say something. Okay, yeah. So I was saying something earlier on and my network was breaking, so I'm just going to repeat myself for what I said initially. My apologies about my network. I was saying when you actually register your AWS account, you get access to the root user, right? With your root user, please don't make use of your root users to do anything on your account. It is very important. This is for me to use somebody that holds AWS money. Please don't make use of your root users to access your AWS account. Create an IAM user. Even AWS will tell you this, right? Because one of the basic security pillars on AWS is IAM. One of the basic pillars of AWS is security, and in security, they are very, 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 very insistent on using IAM to control access. Don't use your root user. All you just need to use your root user for is just to check your billings, basic administrative functions that does not require you to create any resource. If you want to develop something, even if it's your account, create a role. You could see I have roles in my account. Create multiple roles or create a single role. Attach what you want to do to that account. Make sure you limit it. You could check AWS free pricing to actually see what each things cost to create a EC2 instance, to see the cost of each EC2 instance, which one is free. You understand? You could check out things like that, then create your permission based on things like that and attach it to that particular user you're creating. Please and please try as much as possible not to create. This is from me to you. Please and please try as much as possible not to create resources using your root account. Please, thank you. Creation of individual IAM users. You could see create individual IAM users, like I made mention of, and you could put the users in a group, or you could give the users just straightforward access. Use AWS defined policies for assigning permissions if required. You saw what AWS policies are, the ones they've already created. It's preferable to use those kind of policies instead of just creating yours, especially if you don't feel the need to create yours. Usage of setting groups to assign permission to IAM users. This answers Tony's question. Use setting groups. Use groups to attach users to groups so that you could assign permissions to particular users. Grant least privilege. Yes, grant least privilege. As a user, right, the permission you should give them, I was giving an S3 full access I was creating an S3 full access. That's actually very wrong. You could see AWS told me they don't want me to. When you're creating users, please and please, it is very much advisable to just give permissions to only what you want that user to do. So instead of just giving the user access to all the S3 buckets, give the user particular access to those particular, the particular bucket you want the user to interact with, or the application as the use case might be. It is very, very important. This is because if that, okay, for example, let's just say somebody had access to another account that has access to the S3 bucket. If the account has access to all S3 buckets, the person can do anything on your account. Basically, copy your security and stuff like that. You understand? Compromise your security and stuff like that. But if the user has permissions to only one bucket, even if they have access to that particular account, they are restricted to only that bucket. You understand? Only that bucket, that's what they're restricted to. They can't do anything else. That's the benefit of little things. Little things like this, you might not see the benefits, but major huge companies lose lots and lots of money just to little mistakes based on securities. They overlook things like this. Little mistakes like this cost huge cost. So usage of access level to review IAM, use particular access level to see what access the person has, what kind of level the person is, then assign access based on that level. The configuration of strong password policy for users, I could attach how strong I want your password policy to be. If your password policy is not that very strong, I don't want you to have access to my AWS account. So if the three people I gave access to, if they could confirm they have access to the AWS account, that would be great. If not, it's still good. This brings us to the end of my. You could confirm? Wow.
Yeah, yes. I can confirm with restrictive permissions, I think.
Yes. Thank you. Even Vitalis too. Thank you so much. So this brings us to the end of my presentation. Thank you guys for having me. I'll take questions now. If you don't want to actually put in your questions in the first place, you could ask me your questions. I'm just going to switch off the slides and turn on my camera. So sorry about the network. That couldn't allow me to share camera at the same time. So if you have questions, you could go ahead and ask. The floor is yours. If not, I'll pass on to Mark. Mark, can you hear me?
Okay, great. I don't know. Anyone who has questions? I do realize at some point Kevin has a question, but as he prepares to ask his question, I do realize at some point we kind of lost you. But the good thing is we have a recording of the same, and it will be clear on the video. So no worries, we'll be able to upload this after this session. Okay, Kevin, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I can't do my video, but I'll ask my question. Thank you so much, first of all, for the good presentation, Teddy, on how we can be able to leverage IAM to give different users different rules. One big challenge I've ever seen, especially with IAM, is, let's say you give a user access to, let's say an EC2 access, and maybe that EC2 is also referencing an S3 bucket, and you need to maybe give some fine-grained controls because you don't want to give S3 full access. And again, maybe also a user leaves an organization and you have to deprovision their access, or maybe they change departments. So I don't know whether you've seen that as really a challenge, and how maybe you overcome such challenges, especially when there's a need for finer grained controls, especially with the policy.
Okay, especially with the policy. Thank you for that question, Kelvin. That's a very nice one. This question is also tied to what Tony asked, the benefit of having user groups, right? I'll take the last one first. A user change, let's say, for example, a user changes departments within the company. All you just have to do is remove the user from a particular user group and attach it to the new department user group. You already have the user, you understand? All you just need to do is delete the user from that user group, then attach the user to a user group you've created for the next department, automatically revoking all the former access the user has and giving the user new access based on the user group the user is. If that answers the last one. Okay, so the next one will be if a particular user leaves the organization. If a particular user leaves the organization, or you could just delete the particular user. You created individual users, as the case might be. You created individual users. All you just need to do is delete the user. you delete the user, automatically revoking access. If I delete the users I created and I give permissions to now, right now, I'm revoking access to those users. It's as straightforward as that. You understand? So that answers the second question. If you're not okay with any of the answers, you could please drop a comment or just say something. The third one, a user has access to an EC2 and the EC2 has access to an S3 bucket, right? A fine-grained permission level access. Okay, I really didn't get the question, but I'm just going to say you want to assume you don't want to give the user an access to the S3 bucket. You understand? But you still want the user to have access to an EC2. A fine-grained level permission, there will be, let's say, for example, the EC2 reads or the EC2 writes into the S3 bucket. When creating the policy, when creating your policy, you specify only write into an S3 bucket. Now, even if the user have access to EC2, the user can't see what is in the S3 because the only permission attached to the S3 is to write into attached to the EC2 is to write into the S3 bucket. You understand? This actually specifies the levels of access, all these fine-grained levels of access. You understand? All these little things you have to actually note, of course, are actually very important. If you don't really take note like these, mistakes might occur. If you give the EC2 instance a full access to S3, you know that all the user is able to do is just to write the logs into the S3. The user will take permission of that instance to see and read what is in the S3 bucket. So specifying the level of access is actually very important. I hope those answer your question, or if you want me to clarify better, you could just please make mention of it.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, although the last part you're breaking, but I really got to understand, especially on the part of moving a user to a different department. But again, in terms of in reality, especially when you're moving somebody to a different department, they might be having some resources that they created, and you need to understand maybe what they were doing in that account before you revoke their access, maybe so that you have an idea. Because especially, let's say, like right now, you've given access to it was who? I think it was I saw it, I think Vitalis, Anthony, and everything. Yes, so like trying to get visibility into what they've done in their accounts, so that maybe, let's say, if they're interchanging departments, it's very easy for you to know now these are the resources that now Vitalis is going to be having and something. Because yes, you might revoke their access for the purposes of privacy and ensuring that you know who now has access to what. But then again, maybe in reality, there's usually that transition period when you have to know what this person was doing. And I know this is what we call service control policies and everything. But sometimes I usually see, especially in giving a user access to, maybe, let's say, for example, for my own example, I had a person who I had to give access to light sale on my account. But then again, I realized when I gave some fine-grained access, they are not able to do really too much. So I just had to give them light sale full access. You can see that. But then again, I don't want that person to be really launching some instances or launching some light sale instances the way they want as and when, because the bill is going to be on me. So how really am I going to make it much fine-grained to ensure that I have the peace of mind that person is only accessing this one instance and they can do all that they want in that instance?
Yeah. So I think basically those are two questions. I'm going to take the first one. The first one is, how do you know what a particular user is doing? AWS has a service called CloudWatch, right? And CloudWatch basically watches over the cloud using the name. So CloudWatch has CloudWatch logs where you could actually view what particular users actually do, regardless of the user, right? You could actually go to a CloudWatch log. I think you could run it. I don't think it's a query. You could just select the options and select, okay, this particular user, you just put in the particular username of the user, and it specifies what the person has ever done ever since even if it's just signing into the console, it is actually specified in the CloudWatch log. You understand? so that you could tell, okay, this is what's this. You actually track the steps of that particular user using that. You understand? That's what. For the second one, I do get it's actually stressful to actually, it's very much stressful to actually go permission, because after configuring 2-3 times and you see you're not having permission to do this, you're not having permission to do that, you just give it full access, right? In that case, right, I would say specify access with full access. Now, let me say this. You could attach multiple policies to users, to a particular user or user group. What you could do in this case is you could give the user full access in the first instance, then start attaching policies that denies little access till you get to what you want the user to do. You understand? You see those little denies, it's going to stop even if there is a full access there. Like now, I give you full access to an S3, then I just say, okay, I don't want you to have access to delete S3, anything from S3. I could just write that little part, just create the service, delete, don't allow this user delete from S3, then attach it to that same user. Automatically, since there's a deny there, that user is not going to be able to delete, regardless of the full access. You understand? So you could actually attach full access first, then attach layers of just backward. You could do it backward, attach layers till you get to the kind of fine-grained permission you want the user to have, because that fine grain is actually very important. Like you made mention of, the bail is on you. You understand? The bail will always be on you. Fine-grained permissions are actually very, very, very important. Even the user might not know and just mistakenly like create something. Kevin, I hope that does that answer your question? Do you want a final explanation?
Totally. Thank you so much. It really answers it. Thank you. I've gotten something there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else with any other question?
Sorry, just a clarification.
Okay.
Account-related activities. Did you mention that CloudWatch?
Yeah, CloudWatch has. I definitely think it's CloudWatch logs.
Or
Yeah,
how about
CloudWatch has a
CloudTrail?
log. Okay, I did make mention of AWS CLI. Cloud Shell is the web CLI, like your user terminal.
CloudTrail.
Oh, CloudTrail. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I confused. I made a mistake then. It is CloudTrail, not CloudWatch.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
For those I made mention of initially, it was CloudTrail. CloudTrail is actually what user does in the cloud, not CloudWatch. My apologies, sorry. Apologies about that. CloudTrail is actually what each you see. Even if the user just like signs in, it will read their access to web console. Even if the user uses an API key or an SDK, so user did this at this specific time, it is in the trail which you could use to tell the specific user and what that specific user did within that particular time. You understand? So it's CloudTrail, not CloudWatch. Apologies about that, guys. Any other question?
I think we're good. Thank you very much. I think as we wind up, we can definitely take, like, I think one photo. If you can switch on your videos. That would be great. As people do that, I've really learned something new in this, especially in terms of restricting what kind of EC2 instances people can create. That would be really good in terms of implementing it. I have had an instance whereby it wasn't even an EC2 instance. It was a database. It was spanned up in Mumbai. It was really huge. It did cost us a pretty penny. So I had to restrict that. But now that I can restrict to a region and to only maybe a very small database, I think that's really cool. Yeah, awesome. So guys, if you don't mind, you can switch on your videos, then take one picture for the road, then we can call it a day. Great. Hello, Kevin, Collins. I think Collins was the first person to come today. Hello, I noticed that. That's really cool.
Also, first person with permissions, my account.
Yeah. Innocentia. Let me see. I want to hide people who speak of you. Anyone else? Okay. noise we cannot hear. Billy, hello. William. Okay, great. I think because of time. Okay, we're getting on okay. Okay, I think Teddy, you can give us one Nigerian word that we can say. Not Nigerian. From either is it Yoruba or whichever one that's there.
Pidgin. I'd rather go for Pidgin. That Pidgin is.
That's fine. That's cool.
It's more diverse. Nigerian word. I don't know. Okay, let me go for Yoruba. I'll go for Omo Nainjanimi. It's a bit of a tongue twister there. Could you say it after me if you can? Omo Nainjanimi.
Omo Nainjanimi.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. You get the hang of it.
Okay, what does that mean?
I could type it out. I could type it out.
What does that mean? I don't know if you can hear me. Anyway, we can.
What does that mean?
Okay, cool. So we can.
I could type it out so that we don't get it confused.
Okay, there's a delay. There's definitely a delay. So what we can do, we can unmute. Just be happy. I don't know what you want to do, but take one photo for the road, then you can whatever. Tony seems to be in a mist somewhere. We can't quite see the person. What of Furai, manze? People are not happy. I was speaking English, Swahili. I don't know why. Okay, cool. I think I've taken a bunch. Ooh, thank you. We've come to the end of today's session. Thank you very much for coming through. Apologies for the network there a bit, but thank you very much for coming through. Shout out to Collins for coming in early. I know part of what we needed to do from the last time was have a repository of all the slides. So what we'll do, and it's kind of still in the works, we will be able to share that so that you can be able to kind of follow what we've been doing so far. And also, if you have any other ideas on how we can improve the user group, you know where my number is on WhatsApp. You can reach out to me. I'm happy to help you as much as I can and also implement it. So unless there's anything else, I think we can call it a day. Yeah, so let me share my screen. Let's see. As I play music, as we call it a day, yeah. So you can drop off.
Classic music.
Nobody loves you the way that I do. Nobody can love you the.
Also, actually, I apologize. Do you have any socials you want to share as we go on, as we end? Actually, that would be really good to share. Teddy, do you mind?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Please do. Please share as we call it a day. And also, please follow us on Twitter, UG Kenya. We'll be posting more things there, making it interactive as we go on. All right, I'll stop recording.